Listen to the All in My Head podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny, and I am your host. And welcome to episode 16. You have landed here for episode 16. And the episode is called Nourishing the Feminine, Ayurveda's Guide to Midlife Wellness. And let me tell you about our wonderful guest today. With 25 years of experience, Larissa Hall-Carlson is a renowned expert in Ayurveda, yoga, and mindfulness, specializing in optimal performance and holistic well-being. A certified Ayurveda practitioner and yoga educator, Larissa has spent her career training elite-level musicians, athletes, and executives in mindful living. A lead faculty member for a yoga and health center in Stockbridge and Ayurveda for 20 plus years, Larissa previously served as a dean for that school and co-created the popular yoga journal courses Ayurveda 101 and 201. A passionate writer and educator, Larissa's rich teachings have been featured in Yoga Journal, The Washington Post, Men's Journal, Shape, Elephant Journal, In Style, Prevention, Well and Good, Mind, Body, Green, and many more. She also is the creator of transformational audio courses on Insight Timer, which is my personal fave for meditating. And she has courses such as Ayurveda for meditators, mindful musicianship, mindfulness for caregivers, and pranayama for restoring vitality, guiding listeners toward balance, breath, and deeper self-connection. Through her warm, engaging teaching style, Larissa makes ancient wisdom accessible, empowering students to integrate mindfulness, movement, and Ayurveda into their daily lives for greater ease, energy, and well-being. And I personally had the privilege of moderating Larissa's yoga class for almost 2 years, and we bonded over early mornings, which she knows I don't love, so she knew I loved her, and quotes. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I just want to welcome you, Larissa, to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
It's wonderful to be back with you, Jenny. Thanks for having me today.
No, thank you. This episode, we will be talking about perimenopause and menopause, which we both know a little something about, and really kind of midlife wellness, and also just the art of aging well, right? We're here, we're in it. So how can we make it the best journey possible? So I think let's have the opening question be, for those who may not be familiar with it, what is Ayurveda?
Ayurveda is a system of medicine from India. It's said to be about 5,000 years old, so the oldest, most continuously practiced system of medicine in the world. We describe it as yoga's sister science, and it is a thorough, sophisticated system of medicine that covers everything we need and experience in this life. So everything from prenatal care to geriatric care, psychology to Ayurvedic surgery, diet practices, lifestyle practices, massage, herbology, aromatherapy, self-care, you name it, Ayurveda has a lot to say about it. Ayurveda is really, Jenny, it's about living in harmony with nature. It's a system of medicine that focuses on common sense, and it's deeply nourishing, deeply nourishing. It works well with any other system of medicine. It plays nicely with others. So for folks who practice holistic medicine, naturopathy, traditional Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, allopathic medicine, it works well with others, and it really focuses on the self-care.
And that is a lot. We know, we understand that. And it's just beautiful the ways that you can incorporate Ayurveda. And we'll talk a little bit more about, how you do that seasonally. But also, can you share a bit of your journey on how you got into Ayurveda and how has it shaped your approach to this midlife wellness?
I think like many people nowadays in the West, I was introduced to Ayurveda through a spa. So I went to get a spa treatment. My mother had gotten me a gift certificate to get a birthday spa treatment. And I looked on the menu and picked out what I thought was the most scrumptious, delicious kind of treatment, which ended up being like an exfoliation massage with like a thick paste, sort of Jenny like getting scrubbed with chunky peanut butter, but it wasn't that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was, nourishing herbs and spices and oils and such that deeply scrub and, slough off the dead skin and enhance circulation and decongest the lymph and all these wonderful things. But that was an Ayurvedic treatment. And I'd never heard of Ayurveda, but I had been doing yoga for a few years. And so when I went in to get my treatment, the treatment was at a yoga center. And the therapist took my pulse before I had the treatment and also had me do a questionnaire that was assessing the Ayurvedic doshas or the energies that show up in the body mind, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. And that was really surprising, to me. But what I discovered was that the smells of the aromas of the products and the way that the treatment was done was just so deeply soothing and felt like a perfect fit for me,
Right.
And after the exfoliation massage, part 2 was another treatment called a Shirodhara, which is a stream of warm oil poured over the forehead. And it's sort of like instant meditation. and so it worked like a charm to put me in a relaxed state. And so I fell in love with Ayurveda right there and then with that first spa treatment. And nowadays in the West, you can find Ayurveda in most of the elite spas, across the West. They're all the best spas have Ayurveda treatments. And so that's a really common way into this system.
Right. And we just finished talking about, you went away for a retreat and that I'm going to try to be more mindful in this season of my life and treating myself and basically giving myself permission to, partake of these beautiful treatments that, yes, they're beautiful and they're luxurious, but they're also necessary for our bodies and necessary for, these amazing and interesting things that are happening to our body during this time. And I know because I'm in that throes of menopause right now. So there's a lot of these imbalances that happen for women in their bodies during perimenopause and menopause. How can Ayurveda address those?
Well, Ayurveda being a full system of medicine, it works with all kinds of conditions and disease states. And the transition through perimenopause and menopause is neither of those. It's not a condition nor a disease, but sometimes it can kind of feel like that. It can feel like we're getting smacked around, And because it's essentially, adulthood puberty in reverse, right? We're having an experience of the endocrine system, the hormones changing substantially, right? So then the endocrine system is recalibrating. And then with that, the body-mind need to adjust. So it's like the whole body's being cooked into a new state of being. And Ayurveda has many foundational principles that are they're tried and true. They're incredibly sophisticated and efficient and effective. And one of the principles is that whenever life or an experience in life or a condition is complex or complicated, or even chronic, if it's complex or complicated, then the Ayurvedic approach or the remedy is to simplify. So going through perimenopause and menopause, and for men, andropause, as their hormones shift as well.
Right.
It's complex and complicated. The system is resetting, recalibrating, and often at a time, for most women, perimenopause starts somewhere in the 40s and is moving on through the 50s. I'll be 50 this year, and I've been in perimenopause for 8 years. It moves, through the 50s, and for some women, they don't transition, into the postmenopause until the 60s, so there are a couple of decades there where this transition can be happening. And oftentimes, there's a lot going on outside of the body that one is responsible for, raising kids, taking care of aging parents. Oftentimes, this is a time in the career where one is climbing the ladder, taking on more responsibilities, being promoted, that sort of thing. And so life can be even more complicated and complex. So Ayurveda recommends that through the process of perimenopause and menopause, there's a real need to prioritize self-care and give oneself permission to say no, to do less,
Mm-hmm.
to simplify, which is a whole puzzle, which we'll talk about, so it's like, well, how the F do I do that? It's, there's too much going on, but there are ways, there are very efficient, simple ways to create more space and downtime in the day. And it's those times of pause and slowing down and being more mindful and nourishing the self. It's those times that allow the nervous system to calm down, the brain, the mind to settle down, and the endocrine system thereby to feel more relaxed and easeful.
Yeah. And I think that that's a beautiful way to put it, but also just as women in general, we take on so much, whether we're mothers or we're just in our careers and we're busy, we're wives. We're so busy our whole entire lives, and we're pouring into everyone else. So this has been a time, and we talked about it prior to our recording, but I also, I joke about it, but I'm so serious when I say like, yeah, I say no to things a lot more now, and I don't feel bad about it. I think that that's the difference. I always used to feel bad if I said no to someone or something, and even just taking time for myself. And now I'm like, yeah, there's 5 things I need to do on my desk, but the beach is 3 minutes away and the sun is out. So gotta go. Bye. And I don't feel bad about that, and sometimes I just don't even take my phone. I'm just like, no, I'm not responding to that now, and I'm not going to do it. So that mentality changes for us, which is a beautiful thing, because I think we need that. And just like you said, simplifying. I think that that's so hard for us in this, and maybe that's more in this Western world, right? Where we're always go, go, go. And it's the need to have all the things and do all the things. So simplifying, it sounds simple.
But it's not easy, is it?
But
right?
it's not easy.
It's not easy. So what often happens is, as you're saying, this time of life is often, folks experience piling on of responsibilities and do, go, multitasking, jamming from one thing to the next thing to the next thing,
Right.
and then trying to sneak in travel and then go on adventures and then take care of the laundry and all. Like, there's so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real invitation is to reclaim mindful moments and mindful minutes in the day, and to start, as you're experiencing, start saying no to things that are really unnecessary. And so some of those choices can be easy, like, or easier, like limiting screen time and scrolling time, and choosing instead to go to the beach, to take a walk, to sit in the park, to get on a balcony and look at the sky, like to choose to not zone out in front of a screen, because even though that is a kind of relaxation technique and it does provide entertainment, it never refills the batteries, does it? Like, it doesn't
actually pours more in stress.
Yeah, it totally does. So it feels like that's a treat sometimes, like get movie marathon, zone out, scroll,
Right.
like, oh, it's me time, I'm just going to zone out. But actually, that kind of backfires most of the time. Then there's nothing wrong with certainly relaxing with a movie or watching a show. But, folks use that as a fix to the situation. And it's not a fix. It's not a remedy. And so what's much more nourishing, where you get more bang for your buck, is to actually get out into nature, to take a relaxing walk, or choose to go and, draw yourself a bath and sit in the bath and listen to music and light a candle, instead of watching another episode of something that's just mind-numbing, right? So it's really about being more finicky, being more picky about choices, and changing the way we use our time. So I have a lot of other tips for that, but entertainment is a big one, because there's such a desire for so many women to go, and then crash.
Absolutely.
Burn out. And then the burnout tends to come with mind-numbing activities. And so it spirals downward.
Right.
Whereas if we can simplify the go, go, go or slow that down, it's like a two-pronged
Right.
approach. Like, how do we slow down the go, go, go a little bit?
Right.
Then there's an opportunity to choose downtime activities that are actually rejuvenating and not numbing.
Right. And I think that's the thing. I think I hear from a lot of my friends, especially at this stage of life, that they're just like, I kind of crashed and burned, and I've got this sickness, or I found out that I had this. And it's really like, it's your body's way of telling you, like, slow down. You're doing too much and you're not taking care of yourself. And I think I say that more often than I've ever had, is like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I used to say that, but I never did it. And now I'm like, no, seriously, ladies, like, we need to enjoy this season of our lives. We need to pour into ourselves first. So, yeah.
We absolutely do. And with that, Jenny, one of the big pieces here is acceptance. Like going through the process of midlife changes. A lot of women are attached to how they used to do things in their 30s and 40s,
Right.
Oh, I used to exercise like this hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I used to go all day and I was never tired. I could work for hours and I never lost steam, right? But the hormones are shifting, and that's not a sign of weakness. It's the body is recalibrating. It's a new stage in life. And there's a great benefit to having a little bit of a ritual or a ceremony, an acceptance around that of like, yeah, the body's changing. And so to skillfully respond to the body's changes, and to not be attached to how we did things in previous decades, that's a big part of having a positive mindset for this new midlife stage. Because otherwise folks get so attached, and then they, they're exhausted, and they, slam more coffee and rally for vigorous vinyasa and spin class and, flipping tires at the gym and stuff like that. And then they burn themselves out even more. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of those activities,
right.
But when one is exhausted, those things are less of a medicine and become more of a poison.
Right. And I think that's what, I have been learning in this season, but, really since I had my car accident over almost 8 years ago, it was really listening to my body. Like, I couldn't do all the things that I did before. When I gained weight and I did all these things, and I was looking at myself as what I couldn't do, as opposed to what my body was capable of doing, instead of giving it that grace to say, so it looks different and it feels different, but that doesn't mean I can't move my body in a different way and still get all the benefits of. And, I think that's, for me, that's why yoga has been so helpful, not mind, body, but also I had to stop and say, look at what my body can do. And even if I have to modify something, I'm still able to move my body and feel good afterwards, and feel clearer and lighter. And, that was definitely a relearning. This whole season for me has been a relearning of everything, right? Of what I thought and perceived midlife was going to be, of how I wanted to move forward in my life, of things that harmed me or were traumatic in the past, and kind of relearning and retraining my brain to look at it in a different way and look at it as a positive. What did I learn from that? How did I grow? So that's been, the big key takeaway for me in this life, and saying like, no, it's not a midlife crisis. Why do we call it that? That was my last episode, this is midlife magic for me. I'm doing things and stepping into areas and loving this new journey that I've opened up for myself. And yeah, I feel like it's just the starting point, not a halt or a crisis per se.
Yeah, not at all. And Ayurveda sees it as we call these years, the postmenopausal years, are the wisdom years. The wisdom years, and we really take all of the experiences, one's own unique personal journey, and learn from it, and then share those experiences, pass on that knowledge, teach others, inspire the next generation. And so it is something to step into. Like, menopause, postmenopause is a very exciting time, and many women who find a healthy way to walk this road say that these are the best decades of life. Like, really stepping into that time of not worrying about what other people are thinking,
Yes.
and being positive member of society,
Right.
but living in a way that really is personally nourishing, good for oneself and good for the world. That's really what we like. And so that permission to do things differently is really essential to simplify. And what modern research has shown, and what Ayurveda has known for thousands of years, is that consistency is more important than duration. Consistency is more important than duration. So, a lot of women experience weight coming on and puffiness and lethargy and sluggishness and that kind of thing during this life stage as the hormones are resetting, recalibrating. And so we do want to have daily exercise if possible, try to get daily exercise, but it's more moderate. So we want it to be gentle, moderate, gentle, intermediate kind of exercise where you're circulating energy every day, working the muscles, strengthening the bones, keeping the joints limber, working the cardiovascular system, working the respiratory system, but without getting huffy and puffy and aggressive and rough. Because that backfires, and what that does is it actually jacks up the fight or flight nervous system, right? It jacks up the sympathetic nervous system, which is already kind of on overdrive for many women during this time of life because they're multitasking and doing so much.
Right.
So that nervous system gets too much action. And what we really need for balance during midlife is to be in the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system governing state more often. And that's the nervous system we get into when doing exercise that we enjoy, that is gentle and moderate, that feels good, where you get a little sweat on the brow,
Right.
but the face doesn't turn beet red, but
Right.
you don't need to recover from the exercise. Right. That's a big deal this time of life. And of course, there are going to be elite athletes who need to approach things in a little bit of a different way. But generally, for the masses, we want to go middle of the road, right? Like the Buddhist middle path. Ayurveda is very into that for this stage of life, because life is already wearing the system down, and the changing of the hormones is a little exhausting. And so we need to balance all of that output of energy with things that are truly recharging, rejuvenating, slowing, nourishing, that kind of thing. So like slow flow vinyasa, yin yoga, restorative yoga, tai chi, qigong, going for a jog instead of a long, crazy run, going for a brisk walk, doing a nice, moderate hike, going swimming, dance classes, do something different, play, be playful, go hula hooping. We want there to be regular activity to keep the system strong and to keep the metabolism in check. And doing a little bit every day is much more effective than doing a lot once in a while. So even the most recent modern research has shown that a minimum of 10 minutes a day makes a difference. So go out for a walk if you only have 10 minutes and know that it's going to be incredibly beneficial if you get those 10 minutes every day.
Yeah. Yes. So much better than sitting in for 10 minutes and not moving your body at all. You talked a little bit about the doshas. So can you explain a little bit more about how Ayurveda teaches us to move through these doshic phases in our lives, and how does it shift in midlife?
Yeah, so Ayurveda has lots of different models for the subtle body anatomy and physiology. And one of those models is the doshas, the doshic model. So it's a trio, three energies, or I like to say forces, three forces that have functions in the macrocosm of nature and the microcosm of the body-mind. So these are known as the doshas. And there are three doshas. They're called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata dosha is an energy or a force that is made up of the two most subtle elements that we experience in this world. So Ayurveda would say that, and yoga would say this, that everything on the planet is made of 5 elements: space, wind, fire, water, and earth. These are the 5 elements. And these elements join together in pairs to form those 3 doshas. So space and wind create Vata dosha, water and fire create Pitta dosha, and water and earth, or think water and dirt, create the Kapha dosha. So they're made of the 5 elements. Vata dosha, made of space and wind, is the most subtle of these forces. In nature, it governs the windy, cold, dry seasons of fall and winter. In the body, Vata governs all movement. So it's like the internal wind or internal flow of the life force, the chi, the prana, the vitality. So Vata governs all the movement. So the beating of the heart, circulation of the blood, the movement of nerve impulses through the nervous system, the movement of the joints and the muscles, the process of chewing and swallowing and digesting food, and the movement out of waste products like urine and feces and such. Even the subtle movements of thoughts in the mind. So all the movements in the body are governed by Vata. And so when something's not moving well, then we know that this force has gotten spoiled or vitiated. It's gotten into trouble. So instead of things flowing well, like the breath flowing well, suddenly there's hiccups, or, instead of the digestive system moving well, then suddenly there's, constipation, something like that. So if something's not flowing well, we know that this particular force that governs movement has spoiled or vitiated. And so we want to look at that Vata. So I'm going to speak about that in a minute. Then there's this other force, Pitta, made of fire and water. And Pitta governs the hot, humid summer season out in nature. In the body, it governs the hot processes like digestion, metabolism, the ability to digest information. So right now, listeners, their Pitta dosha is trying to digest what we're talking about, right? Yeah. And so Pitta is like the cook of the body, transforming food into new tissues, muscle, new bone, that kind of thing. And then finally, Kapha dosha is this energy or force that is made of water and earth. So it's a very thick, kind of like muddy, clay-like, very dense kind of force. And in nature, it governs the season that you and I are in right now as we're recording. This is early spring, right? It's like the thaw season. It's sleet, freezing rain, turning to the mud season, and then eventually it'll go to spring. But it's like the early spring, kind of season. And in the body, this Kapha force governs all of the protective processes, essentially, in the body. It's sort of like the bodyguard of the system. Kapha is the strongest of these forces. It has the most stamina and endurance. And Kapha is like a mucus that lines the lungs, protecting the lungs from all the Vata breathing and protecting the stomach from all the Pitta, fiery cooking acids, So it's like a bodyguard dosha. So these doshas govern the seasons of the year, but they also govern the stages of life. So spring, the spring of life, is the Kapha stage of life, youthfulness, basically conception through puberty or conception through the 20s when the brain stops growing. It's the growing years of life, the spring of life, the Kapha stage of life, where Kapha is a very muddy, sticky kind of force, and things stick to the system in the Kapha stage of life. So it's like food sticks to the body and the baby grows into a child, Right. Food sticks to the child and the body grows into an adult, Information sticks in the brain and the brain grows and new neural pathways are created. So that Kapha stage or spring stage of life is the stage of youth, roughly through the 20s. The Pitta stage of life is the basically puberty through menopause. And these are known as the active stage of life, the active years of life, or the fire stage, where we need a kind of fire to blaze a path in the world and create a business for ourselves, maybe create a home, maybe build a family, build a name, build status, create a bank account. You need fire to drive, And so no matter what somebody's individual constitution is, because we each have our own unique constitution, no matter what the constitution is, we each go through these phases of life. So we start in the spring of life, we move into the summer of life, the active years of Pitta, and Pitta is really responsible for cooking the body in puberty. It's cooking the body into a new state, and that's what it's doing in perimenopause and menopause too. It's kind of cooking or transforming the body into a new state, right, in a subtle way. But Vata dosha, the dosha that governs fall and winter, the force that governs all movement in the system. This is the dosha that governs the wisdom years. So basically menopause onward or andropause onward. And this is a time of life where we really want to lighten up and do less. Moving from the active years of life to a time of spaciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so going into, semi-retirement and then retirement, downsizing, right? Becoming empty nesters, giving away one's heirlooms, passing those on while we're still alive, like lightening up the cabinets,
Right.
and having fewer responsibilities. That's where Vata really thrives.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Jenny, what often shows up here is when we're transforming from the Pitta active stage into the Vata wisdom years of life through this process of perimenopause and menopause, there's often a lot of attachment to the Pitta stage because it comes with making our way in the world and having status, And so that can be really hard to let go of or to lighten up. And often, especially in our culture in the West, people are really attached to like working harder and upgrading and buying more when they're getting older instead of lightening up their financial responsibilities and their time responsibilities.
Right.
And that's where this becomes such a big challenge. So I know that's a mouthful. I'll pause there for a moment.
No, I think that's so great because, again, it really does go back to the mindfulness and the retraining of our brain to kind of let some of that go and step into this next season of our lives in a more mindful and like you said, in a softer way. So I think that that's so important because our bodies are going through so much. And then there's that external stuff that's coming in too. So, being able to pause and reset and kind of reframe the brain. And you talked a little bit about, lightening the load and giving away some of these heirlooms. So that's a little teaser of what may be to come in the fall, because we will talk a little bit more about something else. I won't give it away yet, but also you and I have spoken about this before, but food as medicine in this stage of life especially is going to be so crucial. And I'm learning that this digestion that is just telling me what it wants and what it doesn't want. And so I'm really trying to stay attuned to that. But how can food be used as this medicine, and especially with this hormonal balance kind of juggling we're doing in this midlife?
We are what we eat, right? It's going to nourish the brain, the mind, as well as the physical body, right? Our bodily tissues are made of what we eat. That's inarguable. and so choosing wholesome foods, really nourishing foods. Ideally in Ayurveda, we like to eat with the seasons. So favoring the seasonal harvest. So like the spring harvest is filled with lots of bitter greens. Like right now, fiddleheads, ramps, asparagus, broccoli rabe, basically all the greens, mustard greens and dandelion greens. Those are the things that are coming up out of the garden in the spring. And so it's a time to really eat a very kind of a lean diet in the spring, coming off the heavy foods of winter and coming into a little bit of a spring detox, a little spring cleaning. I lead an Ayurveda detox, spring detox too. But we want to favor the seasonal foods as well as foods that are local, because that supports the health of the microbiome, and modern research has shown that too. Favor foods that are homemade and fresh, and foods that are made with love, made with mindfulness. Those are really important. So local, organic, seasonal, that's kind of the Ayurvedic way, which is nice on the wallet because whatever's in season is on sale and in abundance, So
Right,
Ayurvedic eating is nice on the wallet. So we want to eat those kinds of fresh foods. Yeah, so that's important. Whole foods, very, very, very important, better for digestion that way, as well as lots of good spices, digestive spices, and lots of herbal teas that support digestion and hydration. And a lot of women going through perimenopause and menopause experience dryness. And so kicking up good quality hydration with organic herbal teas is a really easy way to balance that out. So those are some of the principles for the what of eating. But what's really interesting, Jenny, is Ayurveda would say that, as long as we're not eating junk food, how we eat and when we eat
Right.
is more important than what we eat. And that's really interesting because in the West, we love focusing on diets, and
Absolutely.
diet trends and cookbooks and all the things, which are wonderful and lovely
Right.
and inspirational and support being empowered. But actually what matters more is how we're eating. And what this means is eating when the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system is in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means eating in a relaxed manner, eating while sitting down most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You could eat standing up but not moving around. That
Right.
would be acceptable sometimes. But eating without multitasking. And this, Jenny, is where we see so much challenge in modern times because many people, especially during this busy, crammed stage of life,
Right.
they're eating on the go, eating in the car, eating at work, not taking lunch breaks, not taking their allotted lunch break that the boss has to give,
Right,
they
right.
legally have to give you that lunch break,
Right.
People just eat, right? They skip it, or they're just eating a little smoothie or a salad or something that's not deeply nourishing enough. But most are eating while they're in the fight or flight nervous system governing state, the sympathetic nervous system, which is not just for a crisis or an emergency. It's the nervous system that governs the go, 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 do, multitask, keep on rolling.
Right.
And so we know from modern science that if we eat when in that fight or flight nervous system state, the blood pulls from the gut and goes out to the limbs and up into the brain to take action.
Right.
And that automatically tanks the strength of digestive ability, which results in gas and bloating, constipation, acid reflux, water retention, weight gain, toxicity, foggy-headedness, sluggishness and lethargy, craving for more snacks and injectables, because the body isn't actually able to properly digest nourishment. So even if you have like a big bowl of organic, local, perfectly cooked spiced food, if you're eating it while stressed, your body cannot digest it well. That is fact. That is inarguable. And that's what's happening for so many women nowadays, is they're eating on the go and they're not digesting, and then they feel depleted because the body's not actually absorbing and assimilating the nourishment from those meals. And so I would say for, today's talk, the mindful eating is along with simplifying, it's a way of simplifying, but it's like the most important thing is slowing down to eat,
Right. I was such a victim of that in my, I say my other life. I was an educator and, I had students who came to me all throughout the day because my classroom was always open to them because they were getting ready to go to college and doing all the things. And so I, in that last 5 years, more often than not, ate in my classroom, standing up, hovering over a student, trying to help them because I never wanted to turn them away. And now it's so funny, even when I'm setting a meeting to meet someone or whatever the case may be, I'm like, oh, we can do it at that time, but let's meet for lunch then. And we can sit. And it's, this is not the most stressful season for me because what I'm doing, I love. So what I'm talking about is not work per se. So I'm like, oh, let's sit and let's have lunch together. If we need to meet during that time, I'm happy to, but I'm not skipping my lunch. So yes, for sure. I get that. And I was such a victim of that. And of course I was doing it because I wanted to, and I wanted to give that to my students, but also it was so not healthy for me because then I had to come home and run for my kids and bring them to all their activities. So it was grabbing something on the go. And then I got really good at, crock pot cooking and making sure stuff was ready for them. And we took it to the fields. And that's a whole other story of how I got all the baseball moms upset with me when they were bringing McDonald's. But it's that go, go, go all day and then continuing to go. And your body is just crashing and feels like garbage by the end of the day. And you're just done and you can feel it. And then it starts again the next day. So I just don't do that anymore. I'm like, no, I'm pausing. I'm stopping. I'm not going to grab that snack, even though I might want that Snickers bar. But does that Snickers bar really want me? My stomach, definitely not. So yes, it is. It's that, being good to your body.
Mm-hmm. And so with that, it's how we eat. And I'll give listeners a few little tips that can be helpful for that. But how we eat is most important. We want to eat in a relaxed manner. We want to eat sitting down. We want to eat in a way that's not multitasking. And then also when we eat is incredibly important. And Ayurveda would say that we like lunch to be the biggest meal of the day. When the sun is highest in the sky, we're just a reflection of the macrocosm of nature. So when the sun is highest in the sky, the digestive fire or the pitta is strongest in the gut. And so lunch is the time to have the biggest meal, the thickest, kind of hardest to digest foods like meat or dairy or desserts. We like to have those during lunch. And then we like supper to be a supplemental meal. Supplemental, right?
Right.
So it's meant to be a smaller, earlier dinner. So like somewhere between 5 and 7 is ideal for that. We want to have a good 2 or 3 hours to digest before going to bed. And we live in a culture where people skip lunch and then they have a huge dinner and they have it late. And it's like the body does not like digesting food during sleep. It doesn't digest food well at night when the system is exhausted. That's fact. And so what a lot of people experience is they eat a big dinner, they eat late, and then they toss and turn all night or wake up with hot slats or, have to pee 8 times during the night. And then in the morning feel sluggish and like slimed, bad breath, white coating on the tongue, feeling like you've got to drink coffee to wake up. That kind of thing. It's like you got to shock the system into waking up. And all of that stuff, along with the weight gain and toxicity and such, water retention, those things can be reduced, avoided, prevented substantially just by changing when we eat and how we eat. So it's not even about messing with the diet. Like if folks just ate a smaller, earlier dinner and a bigger lunch and ate both of those meals in a more relaxed manner. And, as a clinician, Jenny, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. I work one-on-one with people. I've been doing that for over 15 years, as well as training people how to do that. I work with clients with, chronic acid reflux and with obesity and with pre-diabetic conditions and all sorts of things. And these things are drastically improved. So simply, just by changing the when and how of eating. And it almost sounds too good to be true. Folks are like, no, I need an herb, I need a pill, like what, what's my herbal remedy or something, And it's like, no, actually just sit down and stare out the window while you eat, like shut down the kitchen at 7 or 7:30 p.m. It's like game over, And those things, I've watched clients and myself too, like puffiness just disappear, waking up and feeling bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So many things go away with this. So it's simple, it's incredibly effective, it's safe, it's free, but it's not easy because it requires commitment and discipline, doesn't it?
And it requires that change of mindset, which, like you said, is really a cultural thing here in our country, the way we eat and how we've eaten. And I've seen in other countries, where especially Spanish countries, where they have that bigger meal during, in the middle of the day. And even our breakfast is more hearty, but then it's light in the evening. It's a soup. Maybe there may be a little bread involved, but it's soup. It's softer. It's, more nourishing. And in a lot of these countries, they even have that little siesta in the afternoon. And we talk about that and look at it and as a society, and we're like, what? That's so wild. But it's really not. It works, right? And it works for them, and it works in the grander scheme of things. And so again, it's that relearning what we've learned and kind of telling ourselves that's okay. It's okay to change that.
Yeah, and it's a process, and it's useful to do this with the support of a certified Ayurvedic health counselor or an Ayurvedic practitioner. But certainly these changes can be made on one's own, just making dinner a little smaller, a little earlier, and you do it in little baby steps. If you usually eat at 9 or 8 p.m., try to eat by 7, and you just try to shift it up a bit. In terms of the lunch getting bigger, like planning ahead, bringing food to work, a lot of folks listening, I'm sure, work from home. So having food prepared so that at lunch you don't have to cook and eat at the same time. You could have leftovers from dinner from the night before. That's okay. And Ayurveda, we don't like long leftovers, but leftovers for a day or two are totally fine, And so to have some things prepared, that's really useful. A lot of folks find that, first they just have to block out the lunch break. And that's like the first step, especially folks who work busy schedules, is to actually like elbow room lunch break, like put a sign on the
Absolutely.
door, put an email response that says like, I'm not available for this half hour.
Yeah,
Deal with it.
absolutely.
You know, like that kind of
Absolutely.
thing. I like to take your allotted lunch break, you know, and to turn away from the computer, get away from working and multitasking, turn away from the phone and social media scrolling, and
Right.
actually just enjoy the aromas of the food and the
Mhm.
textures and the flavors and the colors, and stare out the window, or in the beautiful weather, go to a park or sit on a
Right.
balcony, you know,
Get
that kind of thing.
outside.
Get outside, sit in your car if that's the only place you can get privacy, you know, just don't drive. But to get some space, you know,
Mhm.
some time in the schedule, that's a big step. And then we want to kick it up from there over time. Because what Ayurveda says is that there's a word, there are several words for food in Sanskrit, but one of the main words
Mhm.
for food is ahara. Ahara. And ahara means food that comes in through the five senses. So Ayurveda would say that food is not just, you know, eating a hummus wrap and, you know, a slice of watermelon or something. Food is what we smell, what we hear, what we
Yes.
taste, what we see.
Mhm.
And we know from modern science that when we're listening to or watching something that is disturbing, that the brain lights up with those disturbing responses, right? The mirror neurons light up with disturbance.
Mhm.
So if someone's eating something really nourishing, but they're watching something violent or listening to someone
Right.
complain and bitch the whole time, you know, like, then the fight or flight system turns on, right? So
Oh,
that's
for
the
sure.
system that's going to then pull blood and energy away from the gut and send it out to the limbs into the brain, and that tanks digestion. And so
Absolutely.
this is a lot of the problem, Jenny, is that folks are maybe eating fairly decent food, but eating it with negative impressions, negative entertainment choices, being around complaining coworkers,
Mhm.
and all that jacks up the fight or flight nervous system, which is going to tank the ability to digest. And so a big part of mindful eating is actually buffering the mind and the nervous system and the endocrine system from an assault, you know, on the senses.
Exactly. It is
And
an
so it's
assault.
like, yeah, it's an assault. So it's like, if you're used to watching TV while eating, then just take the baby step of choosing to only watch things that are positive. If you want to
Right.
watch, go watch the Discovery Channel, or put on Great
Right.
British Baking Show, or, you know, watch
Something
Bridgerton or
nice.
something, you know, yeah,
Yes.
something
Yeah.
that's like positive and uplifting, humorous, romantic,
Right. Don't watch the
educational.
news
Don't
at
watch the
dinner time.
news. Don't watch the zombie
Don't watch
movies.
it in
Don't watch
general.
the
Right.
violence. You know, yeah, don't watch them in general,
Right.
but definitely not during a meal.
Right.
That's incredibly important over time, right? So it's that kind of thing, making choices like that. Or there's so many things like that. But, you know, at work, for a lot of people who eat at their desk, what I would encourage you to do is put on a screensaver that's a pretty scene, you know,
Mhm.
maybe put on some music in the background, flip
Right.
through a magazine. If, you know, if being quiet is too much, flip through a paperback
Right.
magazine or a book or something. Just stay away from the screens and eat slowly, chew thoroughly, savor it. These and many other tips
Mhm.
are really the essential keys to feeling good in midlife. Because without simplifying, slowing down, boosting positivity,
Right.
boosting digestive ability, you
Mhm.
know, without getting more and more into the rest and digest nervous system
Mhm.
state, midlife just becomes a grind.
Right. Right. Yeah, our bodies are already feeling it. And I think I think that's so important. What you said is like what we're taking in the outside. I know that, you know, I always have my phone next to me. I have 3 children, there's grandchildren, there's always something going on. But there are certain people who will remain unnamed that I just can't, especially when I'm eating. You know what I mean? I'm just like, no, because I know what that's going to do to me. And I'll take a pause. And it's not to say I won't talk to them at some point, but it's like, got to put that off a little bit and we'll have to wait on that. So that's important for people to remember, like what you take in is also going to like affect what you're eating. I want to jump into, because we talked about this before, so I don't want to not get into it. Sattva and sensuality. That's a big one for you. And we've been talking about it, and I've been kind of on your Instagram. Maybe start with just a little bit of what that is and, you know, how we can embrace that in this midlife where, again, our bodies are changing and our life is changing? How can we embrace that? And what does that look like for us?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. So in addition to supporting really all genders and gender identities and in moving through midlife in different ways, a lot of what I've been doing in the last few years has been focused on supporting the transition through perimenopause and menopause, and the common loss of libido. And so I've created, as I've been working with clients one-on-one for so many years and guiding them individually through, boosting the libido back up in a wholesome way. And so from that, I decided to turn that into a course, into a group experience, which has been really fun and creative. So I am very interested in helping women bring that libido back. Now, libido is, from the Ayurvedic perspective, it's governed by a force called ojas. Right? So the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, the doshas, that's just one trio. There are lots of other trios and forces in the body and that Ayurveda sees. And one of these things is called ojas. And ojas is the nectar of immunity. Ojas is basically like the finest form of Kapha-dosha. It's this strong, juicy, sweet serum, essentially, that governs immunity. And there's a lot to it, so I won't go into depth with that. But ojas governs immunity, and ojas also governs libido. So Ayurveda sees a very intimate relationship between immunity and libido. They're governed essentially by the same force. There's some, intricacies to that, but they're basically both governed by ojas. And ojas is this sweet, milky, cooling kind of serum. It's like a drop of protection in every cell of the body, essentially. And it protects the body from the invasion of germs and bacteria and virus and pollution and stressors, keeping the body-mind strong, keeping the mind calm when things are chaotic. Ojas is in charge of that. So like keeping your cool, staying collected when there's, an emergency or, something that's really annoying, staying calm, cool, and collected. It's actually ojas that's in charge of that. And what we know is that Vata dosha is the near enemy to ojas. What? Right? So Vata dosha, this dosha that governs movement, it's like a wind. And when there's too much wind, when there's too much movement in life, that wind, which is drying, right? People put out their clothing in the wind to dry it, like wind is drying. When life is too windy, when there's too much go, 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 too much do, 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 too much action of Vata, that Vata evaporates the juice of ojas. And so that's when we see immune system decline. People get sick more often. They get sicknesses that linger more often. They get repetitive sicknesses, right? So it's like the immunity starts to tank. I bet a lot of listeners in perimenopause and menopause are experiencing low immune function right now. And that's low ojas, high Vata, essentially. But it also affects the mind. So little things seem like a big deal when the ojas is low. It's like the mountain out of the molehill, the straw that broke the camel's back. All those phrases are phrases that are expressing the ojas is low. And so the remedy, so with that then, when the ojas is low and the immune system is in decline, then the body prioritizes basically sanity and safety over reproduction, right? And so sex drive goes down. When we're stressed, the sex drive goes down. That's, I know that's not new to anyone, but Ayurvedically, that's high Vata, low ojas. That's the scenario. So the remedy is to simplify, to rehydrate, to slow down, to bring in more mindfulness, to rebuild the immune function, to rebuild the ojas, to settle the Vata and boost the ojas. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that, which I won't go into right now. But essentially, Jenny, it's all the things that we do to support a wholesome transition through midlife will be useful for both the immunity and the libido. And so I've created a 6-week course where we focus on slowing down, doing mindful eating, doing moderate exercise, hydrating more, and then learning about ojas boosting superfoods and spices and traditional classical aphrodisiac recipes. that are really Ojas boosters. They're going to boost immunity and sex drive at the same time, which is just amazing, right? And they're delicious. So like I have some in my belly right now. You know, I ate a little cacao date ball, you know, before we came on with certain spices like cinnamon, and I had coconut oil and almonds and shatavari powder. People probably have heard of ashwagandha. That's another immunity booster, but it's kind of hot. It's not so great in the hot weather. So there are lots of herbs and spices and superfoods that boost libido and boost immunity. So we focus on that. And then we also do fun and creative things like we work with aromatherapy. There's a lot of aromas that help to increase sleep, which supports ojas, to calm the mind and support peacefulness, meditative practices, breathwork practices that support the ojas and the libido. As well as we make really fun things like with the libido boosting aromas, like your own massage oil, because oil massage is really good for ojas and libido. We make lingerie drawer sachets, you know, like they just smell so good with, you know, like lang lang and vanilla and things like that, you know, and all sorts of other fun and exciting things. But it's a really beautiful community and a way of getting some momentum together as a group to boost mindfulness and to slow down the spin that shows up in midlife.
And I love that because I just love that we're even talking about that more, right? I mean, we come from this era where, you know, these things were not spoken of and it was so kind of taboo to speak about these things, but it's life. This is our life. And so, you know, if things are going to change in our bodies and in our minds, how can we embrace that and make the best out of it? And not even make the best out of it, you know, make it more in a different way. And so I love that you're stepping into this sattva sensuality and that you're sharing it with us. And we'll give all that information at the end. And clearly, when I drop this episode, I'm going to put all the links so that you can find out more information about that. But maybe one kind of takeaway, or not even a takeaway, but maybe a way that women can step into self-care and self-love and feeling like our body's changing and it looks different and it may feel different. How can we, not only Ayurvedically, but with this sattva sensuality, step in and feel good in our bodies? Like one maybe small thing that we can do to kind of shift that in our brain and in our body.
Yeah, the invitation is really around boosting wholesomeness. You know, and that's what that Sanskrit word sattva means peacefulness or balance or harmony or wholesomeness or goodness. There's a lot of translations. And that's really what the invitation is in midlife, is to reduce the chaos, the busyness, and to boost the wholesomeness, the peacefulness, the serenity, the tranquility, the quiet time. And so quiet is what's coming into the forefront of my attention right now, and recommending a tip to listeners is to invite in a little bit more quiet. And so that might mean going for a walk without having AirPods in, driving without listening to the radio, taking a walk without calling someone, you know, that kind of thing, right? Eating a meal in silence, or maybe with just some gentle background music, that kind of thing. But giving oneself permission to quiet down. You know, one of my favorite ways to do that is sky gazing, stargazing, moon gazing. You know, right now, the planets are all aligned in these auspicious ways, and there's so much to see in the night sky. And so to just meditate on that dark indigo starry sky, you know, just getting quiet with a cup of herbal tea, you know, and staring at the sky, or taking a silent nature walk, you know, without talking. So there's so many opportunities to not talk. And that's what I would invite listeners to experiment with, you know, a few minutes here and there. What's it like to just listen? What's it like to be quiet? What's it like to work out without having pumping music?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, very different.
Yeah. And it invites the whole nervous system to calm way down. Yeah. And it prevents that overwhelm. It's actually a way of reclaiming mindfulness during the day. Is don't add more. If the brain is overwhelmed, Don't listen to, another book on tape. Don't
Right.
call someone else. Like, just actually give the brain a chance to quiet down.
I think that's been crucial to me, and the key of especially starting my mornings and ending my day, and just this not grabbing my phone and just meditating first. And even if it's in the evening, using like a guided meditation to fall asleep, because I do have trouble falling asleep. That has been so life-changing for me, because I know and I feel it in my body, but after a meditation, that I can kind of step into whatever the day is going to throw my way, and I feel differently. And if I miss that meditation in the morning, or I'm running late or whatever the case may be, and I've kind of not done it, I feel it, and it kind of infiltrates my day. So I try to take that time. I mean, I absolutely do it every morning and every evening, but especially in the day. And if the day is starting to go sideways, I'm like, nope, that's it. Put that away, and go outside. And I'm such a stare at the moon and, stare at the stars. And so that has been, just a way for me to kind of connect with nature, but also just to settle in that beauty of nature, and what's out there has such an effect on you. And it just shows you kind of like how small we are in this bigger world, but also how beautiful this world is if we just stop and take that moment to just take it all in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. All right. Well, we talked about so much, and I'm sure we could talk for 2 more hours, but we can't. So maybe just one change that people can make today. One change that our listeners can start today that will help them on this journey to midlife wellness.
Offer yourself kindness.
Grace.
You deserve to slow down. You deserve nourishment. You deserve to be able to savor life, right? You deserve to be able to savor the smell of the fresh air and the moments of staring at the flowers, and so to give yourself kindness. So that might mean just placing hands over heart, taking a couple of relaxing breaths. Could be repeating a mantra or a prayer or a phrase of empowerment, to be kind to yourself. Give yourself permission to be kind to yourself.
Yes, because you're worth it. Everyone out there, listen up. You're worth it. So do that for yourself. I would like to just tell you all to stay tuned. I'm going to drop a little tidbit and say that, Larissa and I will be recording something exciting in the fall. And you may think that's a drastic shift, because we're going to talk about death. And that's scary to me. And that has been something that has been scary to me, but I have stepped into it in a different way. And we're going to talk about, how to become more comfortable with that conversation, and planning ahead, and maybe shifting your mindset, like we've talked about here today, into intentional living and what that looks like. Because what I didn't tell you was that Larissa is also an end-of-life doula. So she has a very different perspective and seat at that table of what that looks like. So we're excited to talk about that in the fall. And let me give you some information. And again, I'm going to drop this information into the podcast description when we drop in April. And so where to find Larissa and all the amazing things that she does and gifts that she offers to the world is www.larissacarlson.com. On her Instagram at Larissa Hall-Carlson. But don't forget, she has her other Instagram page, which is at Sattvic Sensuality. So you're going to want to check that out. That is a great page, and there's some beautiful resources there, but there's so many beautiful resources. And on Insight Timer, I know that I listen to her meditations on Insight Timer, and they're beautiful and they're wonderful and they're nourishing. So check her out there as well. And to throw it back to our days of Tuesday mornings, I'm going to end with a quote, and it is by Betty Friedan, who is an American novelist and writer. And her quote on aging: aging is not a lost youth, but a new stage of opportunity and strength. And I want to thank Larissa for being my guest today and for sharing so much of her beautiful wisdom. Thank you so much, Larissa.
It is my pleasure. Wishing all of you a more easeful day and easeful season ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you all for listening today and for taking in this beautiful day of wisdom and all the things Ayurveda and midlife wellness. And as always, thank you for listening to the All in My Head podcast. Have the best and most beautiful day.